But like the thing that kills me the most about that episode is why would you kill a pop star in his hotel room?
Welcome to the Skiffy Infinity Show Screen Scouts.
With that song, Little Warrior, our song, I've given you everything you need.
Aww, that's so cute. I'm Sean.
I'm Brandon.
And on today's show, we are joined yet again by the absolutely amazingly wonderful Michi Trota, multi-award winning editor from many different places and generally, as we've said before, an awesome person. Welcome back yet again, Michi.
Oh, thanks so much for asking me to be on for this. And just the timing is so perfect with this being like the Kung Fu martial arts mystic warrior movie weekend. So this is making up for the hole in my heart that I haven't been able to see Shang-Chi on opening weekend.
Well, I know it's a trial for you to be here and it's super difficult, but we are glad that you could find the energy to come in and be with us, especially while you're secretly training to be a Kung Fu warrior. So,
gosh, it's not a secret if you tell everybody, Sean.
Right? Sean just
come on,
openly just shares everybody's top secret information on this podcast. I absolutely hate it.
Look, it's really easy to share people's secrets if you're making them up.
Making them up.
That's the kind of attitude that is going to get you like caught by assassins because you think you've made something up, but actually you've exposed the truth. And now we're going to have to protect you, Sean. Do we have time to do this?
Yes.
We don't have time for
this.
Of
course I do. I would love to exist in a world in which like the wild stuff in this show happens for real. And I have to like get trained by like a monk how to be a Kung Fu master. And I just get my butt kicked for 13 straight episodes until finally the end when I like channel the mystic power of the earth and successfully defend. I feel like I wouldn't. I'd just be like the plucky sidekick. Well, let's be real. I'm not the hero of the story.
Look, heroes would not make it without sidekicks, and I think we should call them hero support.
Yeah,
I agree.
Plus, you're a professional academic, which means that we know you have some skills.
Uh-huh. I
True.
mean, clearly, if Kung Fu has taught us anything, it is the value of your research partner.
Yes, it really has. Well, with that in mind, we should probably say what we're actually talking about today. Brandon, what is it we're talking about today?
Today, we are talking about the CW television adaptation, Kung Fu, which came out early 2021. It stars Olivia Liang, Kang Watan, Eddie Liu, Shannon Dang, Tima, and many more. And it's brilliant. And if you haven't seen it yet on the CW, you definitely should take the time to see it. And we're going to have a lot of feelings about the first season of Kung Fu.
Before we get to that, just a reminder, if you have thoughts, skiffyinfinity.com/listener suggestions. We want to put together that mailbag episode, and we would really love to hear what folks think about this particular show as one of the handful of shows made in the United States starring overwhelmingly Asian women characters who also kick people in the face, which is a very useful skill to have. And that is a thing that's happening. So, with that in mind, we should probably get to it. All right, Michi, lay the first thing that you think about this show on us. Go for it.
It makes me feel so good to know that Bruce Lee's original vision that he got screwed out of doing, that should have been the original Kung Fu, has found its place in this modern interpretation. And that there are so many things now as a 40-something adult that just annoy me about hero stories, in particular the hero must always go it alone. Being a hero means that you are to be isolated and forever apart from the people you love. This show is like a giant middle finger to a lot of those tropes that you see, everything from like Buffy the Vampire Slayer is what I am inevitably comparing this to in my head, because Buffy was such a big part of my 20s. and the way that it shaped our approaches, particularly to superheroines. But it's something about how instead of trying to fit Kung Fu's heroine into this mold, and the fact that we have a heroine to begin with, it's a woman, and it's not just one woman, it's her entire family, an entire intact family that lives in Chinatown in San Francisco. This is very, very not just American Asian diaspora, but this is very much a Chinese American West Coast in Northern California set experience. So there are a lot of things that make it very specific to that, but you can still relate to them. You can still relate to the story if that is not your, your home base, your culture. But I really, really love how this whole thing is about connections, and so much of the story is based on how you feel about your family and the influence that your family has on you, and the push and pull between wanting to be your own person, but also feeling the pull of family and heritage and responsibility. Like, there's nobody that we've seen throughout the entire season who's actually evil. Like, there's no, there's no master, there's no like Angelus. It's just there are antagonists rather than villains. And I really love how the reason for them being antagonists has some very complex roots. So you're not getting one-dimensional villains. And the quote unquote side characters are not there to serve the hero. They all have their own very important storylines as well. And getting that all to converge and not be pulled in multiple directions is really impressive. Plus, this is just super fun. And you get to see women kicking ass in done-up hair, glittery, fashionable pantsuits at a gala, and heels, and it looks spectacular.
A lot of what you're saying was making me think about like my initial reactions when I was watching this, because I was like, oh, well, this is clearly a show with a lot of Chinese American women playing main roles, and then Chinese women as well, made in the U.S. And I was thinking when I was watching this of like, I don't know any kind of media made in the US in which that's the case for an action-oriented franchise of any kind. And I don't know, there may have been some stuff that has occurred in which this is the case, but the only places I could think of it happening was in actual Chinese cinema, when you do get the occasional action piece that's led by someone like a Michelle Yeoh. It was interesting to kind of come into this and be like, well, this is going to be a very different perspective, because these are people that are not going to be set into the sidelines, which is something that Olivia Liang had talked about why she took this role, because she intentionally didn't want to be like a kung fu star. She didn't want to take those roles that are often offered to Asian women in Hollywood, of like, you just come and do a couple kicks and then you leave the scene. And so when she took this role, she was like, well, I'm taking this precisely because I do get to do kung fu stuff, but I'm also doing this very intense and important story about family where we get to be fully three-dimensional people doing normal people stuff. And I think that that's really important, because if you're watching this as someone who's not from a Chinese American culture, you're getting a different perspective on living in America, for one, and obviously a very different perspective on Chinese culture to some degree. And I say culture kind of loosely because it's playing with a lot of mythology here, but I think that that's really important to sit down with this and really think about the sort of lives that these people are leading, because they're not that dissimilar from anyone else's. They just have different cultural signifiers that are present. And this is a pretty powerful familial story. I mean, I'm just going to say Taimao can be my dad any day if he wants. He is the cutest dad I have ever seen.
He needs to be everybody's dad. And it's wonderful seeing an Asian father on screen who is warm and effusive and is the first to support his children in their in their journey to finding out who they are without coming down on set expectations, which is like that's a trope that we've been conditioned to expect. And it's really wonderful when you see characters like this, like in Kung Fu, and then I keep forgetting the name of the actor, but in the movie Always Be My Maybe, the guy who plays the dad, is also very like, it goes against the grain of how you see distant Asian parents with their children. It's like these are fathers who are very involved in their kids' emotional
Yeah.
lives. Sima is very, very involved in his kids' personal lives, more so than their mom.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it's made clear that she's not being that cold tiger mom
Yeah.
for no reason. She's given some really, you get to see some very great character work on why she has certain expectations for her kids and why she's trying to push them in certain directions. Because, you know, for a lot of us, particularly who are children of immigrants, you know, we understand our parents pushing us to make certain choices because they want us to be safe. But there's that push and pull between, but we want to do things to chart our own path, and we don't want to come into conflict with you over that. But this is just this is another version of parent-child conflict, where it's not about some selfish, vain desire to control your kid, but it's about wanting to protect them because you've seen the things that can happen.
I have a lot of feelings. Like, I made physical notes, and one of those physical notes literally is just the words, Jin Shen is amazing. So, I feel like to qualify this, we do need to set up for people who have not yet seen Kung Fu, the premise of the series, which is, the series is about a young woman named Nikki Shen, who drops out of college, being overwhelmed by family expectations, and decides, you know what? Let's just join a monastery in China and maybe my life will be more chill. And then she discovers that her life does not become more chill because immediately after having a conversation with the head of that monastery about potentially reconciling with her family in the hopes of that granting her inner peace, that monastery is attacked by a woman named Jilan, who tries to steal a sword that is stored in the monastery and succeeds in doing so and killing Nikki's Shifu. In the process of attempting to get revenge against Jilan, Nikki eventually discovers that she is from a long line of ancient warriors for whom the sword actually belongs, and that it is her destiny as a result to not only reclaim those weapons, but to actually resolve the intense family conflict that exists between Jilan and her Shifu, who she discovers is Jilan's sister, and that becomes infinitely more complicated, notwithstanding having returned to her family and discovering, in the years that she has been missing, all of these other family conflicts have just been taking place without her. And now that she's re-entered that situation, now she has to deal with the fact that her family life, as complicated as it has been, can still potentially be reconciled, but still requires work. And one of the things that she learns as a result is her mom knew about this whole destiny thing the whole time.
Yeah. That was kind of a wow, yeah.
Because you already assume in a show like this, either destiny is always very upfront, or the primary argument of the show is you make your own destiny. And both of those things are very fine themes on their own. And then Kung Fu is like, you know, you do make your own destiny, but you made it because it was always yours.
It's like, hey, no, there's a third option here. We're gonna go for the third option.
And everything about that reveal is very telling about both of Nikki's parents in a way that I thought was very impactful. Because on Nikki's mother's end, on Mei Li's end, played by Keng Watan, she didn't do this because she had this ultimate expectation that Nikki was going to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. She just wanted to genuinely keep her daughter safe from a thing that she saw as genuinely destructive.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that she kept that from the entire family fractures the family immediately. So much so that Jin hears that a secret has been kept and leaves.
Yeah.
And you see before, and you can tell how impactful that is, because everything we see of the two of them, of Nikki's parents leading up to that point, is a very loving relationship. They're very sweet together. They clearly know each other. And the fact that he's so upset that she kept that secret from him, not just about Nikki, but about her whole family. He leaves, and you're like, oh my god! It's like you're rooting for them the whole like episode and so following, because you don't want mom and dad to break up.
Yeah.
They're so good together.
Everything about that episode like had me in my feelings because
Yeah.
as you say, you're rooting for both of them to reconcile. And yet in the entire episode you're like, but he's right though. He has a right to be mad though. We know this, right?
Yep.
Like the thing that really caught me off guard, because I love the entire Shen family. And I like the fact that all of these characters not only have their own unique and interesting ways in which they're helpful to Nikki and helpful to the main plot, but they have their own lives, and those lives are lived totally independent of the plot, and we get to engage with those things on their own terms. So the thing that I found so endearing in that episode is that Nikki's brother Ryan goes to help her find their dad, and they already know where they're going to look for him because that's the place where he always is whenever he wants to be alone. And they get there, and Ryan is like, I'm gonna just stay with him and we're gonna chill out for a bit because he's still mad, and I just learned why he's mad and I'm mad too, so we're just gonna relax here for a bit. That entire evening we're already dealing with the fact that Jin is upset that a secret has been kept in his home. And yet still he makes himself emotionally available for Ryan when Ryan has like a personal conversation about how his queerness was received in the family. And I'm like, I would have gotten it if you were mad. And the fact that you stopped being mad to be here for your son is like so much emotionally richer for me. And like, I cried during that moment. It was a lot. Because ultimately, as you say, these are not like, it's very easy to be one note about a character's feelings and about a character's connections in a way that make it very difficult for them for us to imagine them being emotionally available when somebody needs it, or like switching from one emotional state to the other. And all of these characters are complex enough to say, I was dealing with this right now, but I'm going to deal with this other thing because I have a relationship with you as well, because I have a connection with you as well, and I love that so much about so many of these characters. And I have a lot of those feelings about Jilan as well, because it's very easy to write an antagonist who's like, I'm in pain, and all I want to do is cause other people pain. But Jilan is actually almost unnecessarily complex.
I mean, it's so much better to have that complexity that I was afraid that they were going to make her, like, she was going to be the Dragon Lady character, right? Like, she's got the badass dark lipstick, that sort of makeup that makes you you're the really gorgeous femme fatale. She's clearly a formidable fighter. She has, she's got wealth and all of this, but they make sure very, very early on to give her that complexity. She's got reasons behind her thirst for power that go beyond personal aggrandizement. Like, as far as she's concerned, she's doing this because she wants to protect herself. Because all she's ever, she keeps saying that all she's ever known has been betrayal and lies. And really, if there's like one of the core tenets of this series, it's that keeping secrets is a bad idea. It is just a bad idea all the way around. Because all of this happens because nobody's talking to each other about their family secrets.
And even more so, all of this happens because people with strong family bonds don't stop to ask each other how they are feeling.
Right? Like, you could have just sat down and talked about this, maybe just a little bit, just a little.
Yeah.
I feel like that's actually very real to the overall perspectives of a lot of Asian Americans, particularly between immigrant parents and children and grandchildren who were born in the United States. It feels like that whole thing of like, why couldn't you just tell me that this is why you were so strict with me, or why you didn't want me to do this thing because you were afraid for me? Why couldn't you just tell me? And underlying all of this is the awareness of what generational trauma does to people and the kind of generational trauma that your family will carry with them, and your parents and your grandparents just don't want to talk about because they want to put it behind them, or they don't know how to talk about it. But it's still, even if they think that if we don't talk about it, then it's not going to influence our kids, it's like, no, that is clearly not the case, because it's still influencing how we were raised, the things that we were encouraged to do or not encouraged to do, for lack of a better term, the type of destinies that we were being encouraged to fulfill and to think that could be ours.
And the fact that that's a thing that, because all of the children in the Shen family are relatively young, they're in their 20s. So the fact that they're having this revelation in their 20s and making themselves available to share this information with their parents, it's actually really radical in its own right. It's like, we don't have to wait very long to have this conversation. We can have this now. We can have this conversation as soon as I've learned it. It's actually really cool.
I love how all three of the Shen siblings are overachievers in their own way. Come on, you've got Ryan, who's a doctor, but he's decided to work in the community center because that's where he's needed the most. Pay doesn't matter really to him. It's about serving his community. And then you have, what's this? I keep forgetting the sister's name.
Althea.
Yeah, Althea, who's like, boss ass bitch.
Yeah.
She's a boss, and she plays against stereotype too. She seems like very much a fashionista. She's got that bubbly, chirpy personality, but she's sitting there in her beautifully coiffed hair, perfectly done nails, and $2,000 outfit, hacking into people's systems without even blinking an eye. She's a tech genius. And there's so many things that Nikki would not have been able to do without her sister backing her up. So even though we see them having natural sister rivalry, it's not this misogynistic undercurrent that, again, when you see shows that have been typically written by white men where you have female relationships, there's not that underlayer of misogyny between the two of them. Nikki is not judging Althea at all for her choices in fashion, for the way that she presents herself in the world, even though they are two very different stylistically women. And Althea doesn't care really that Nikki, she'll tease Nikki about really, are you going to wear that out? But it's not about saying that she doesn't think Nikki is somehow lesser than. It's because she's like, but I'm your sister. I see I see how awesome you are, and I want what you put on to reflect that, because people should know how awesome you are. And they're so supportive. The three of them are so supportive of each other. I love, again, how much this series is such a giant middle finger to the idea that heroes can't have tightly bound, loving family lives where their families know what they're doing as heroes.
And that even when things are complicated with that family, they're not beyond the realm of potential resolution. Is very healthy. And also to the conversation about how Althea as a character breaks stereotypes. I love the fact that Althea's fiance Dennis, who is wealthy and rich and has all of this family clout behind him, is still willing to admit that his fiance is the smartest person in the room, and B, is such a nerd.
Oh my god, when they walk in, he's playing D&D for his bachelor party. I almost died. I was like, this is not what I was expecting, and I love every second of this. Oh my god.
I saw that, I was like, you're a man after my own heart, Dennis. That's exactly what I would do for my bachelor party. This is brilliant. Thank you for giving me that idea.
He's so supportive of Althea. I'm like, this is how I know this is a fantasy show. I kept waiting for Dennis to turn out to be evil, or to have something to do with the awful situation with Althea's previous boss, because we find out that as part of her journey to becoming this startup tech wizard, that she worked for a powerful white man who sexually assaulted her. Like, and I love that they don't go into any detail. They don't go into the sordid details about it. But the way that she reacts and the way that that storyline progresses, you know exactly what happened to her, and the way that she struggles with with dealing with it, and the fact that there's not a single person in her life that she cares about who questions her or tries to blame her. I'm like, this is we're talking about modeling really great relationships and how to be emotionally supportive of people. This show does really well.
Because especially when it came to that storyline, it would be very like I was waiting for the shoe to drop. I was waiting for
Right?
I was waiting for somebody's character to be like, well, how about we just drop some sexual assault apologetics into this story all of a sudden, just to make somebody a villain. But like nobody asks any questions. Like the fact that when Nikki hears about Althea's experience for the first time, she just stops and listens. She doesn't make it about her. It doesn't become a matter of like trying to find this person and punish him or something like that. It's about, Althea, how do you feel? What can I do to help you?
Mm-hmm.
In another show that wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
I know, and you don't have Dennis trying to play savior or be like, "Oh, I'm so angry at this guy. I'm going to go beat him up for you." It's like he's every step of the way he's like, "What do you want? What do you need me to do?
Yeah.
Do you need me to tap into, into our family's vast wealth to pay for the lawyer, because I will do that." It's great. And I kept there are so many times where I was expecting this show to go right in ways that watching similar shows over the past 30 years has just sort of like trained my brain what to expect. And when they make the opposite or a different decision, it's so refreshing. And I'm really wondering how much of that has to do with the fact that you have a story that's not only featuring a lot of Asian faces, really like there's only like one white guy in the cast.
Yes, that's true.
Now that I think about it, there's really only one white guy in the cast.
Mm-hmm.
He's so nice. And I mean this in like the nice way. He's so nice. But we all know that he's not nearly as hot as the researching librarian love interest who knows kung fu. But you don't have all these things that you're used to seeing and expecting. And I'm wondering how much of that also has to do with the fact that the writers' room and that the directors and the producers for the show are not overwhelmingly white.
Like that's a big deal for me as well, because like I like stopped and actually looked up the like background of the production of this series, which is that Greg Berlanti, who is like responsible for the entirety of the Arrowverse, has been trying to make a kung fu reboot happen several times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
It just so happened that on this run around, he already had so many shows on the CW that the CW were like, "Oh, you're making a thing? Yeah, sure. Who do you have on board?" But the fact that the show's developer is an Asian woman, and the fact that the majority of the writers are Asian writers, means that he was willing to say, well, I want this thing to exist, but it's not about me. I want it to be made as well as it possibly can be made, as truly as it possibly can be made, is a big deal to me, because that doesn't happen on TV very often. It's very easy to just like take that opportunity to just control this thing, and he didn't. And I think that that's actually very impressive.
Yeah, I really like the way that relationships between characters are written on this show just constantly delights me. I'm thinking in particular of the episode where Nikki is going into the woods to search for her aunt, who was supposed to be that generation's inheritor of the warrior destiny. And the reason why her mom wanted to protect Nikki from following the same pathway, because she saw it as dangerous. And so eventually, they go up to Canada. They take a road trip to Canada because why not? And it's Nikki, her love interest, the hot kung fu librarian.
His name is Henry.
Yeah, that's Henry. And then the white assistant DA, who was Nikki's ex-boyfriend, who she just sort of like up and left when she decided to run away to a Chinese monastery so she wouldn't have to become a lawyer. All three of them are going on this road trip together. Nikki doesn't know that, her ex has broken up with his current girlfriend, which is why he's suddenly free to go away for an entire weekend. It could have been this really tropey, oh God, we've seen this love triangle thing a billion and one times. Henry and the DA are going to be sniping at each other the whole time. And we have this moment where Nikki has like gone off on her own again, because that's what she does. And the two of them are like, well, I guess we just have to wait here at this cabin for her and just sleep in the car.
Duke's cabin.
At Duke's cabin and sleep in the car and have this wonderful dialogue while they're trying to fall asleep about like, hey, thanks for helping me out in that fight. Well, I know you had it, blah, blah, blah. And they're very open about like the fact that both of them are interested in Nikki and that they understand that no matter what happens, Nikki is going to just be Nikki and do her thing. And they're just going to have to be there and wait for her to say when she needs them. And then they both, like, I forget which one says it, but they both acknowledge that in the end, whoever she ends up with is her choice. And it's not about the two of them trying to one up each other. They're like, nope, because it's going to come down to who she chooses, and that's the way that it is.
I mean, that's ultimately right why Henry backs off at the beginning of their sort of their relationship's going to become something until he realizes that she clearly still has something with the other guy. It unclear what exactly that it is, but he just basically says like, you clearly just have some stuff you kind of need to figure out. This is when she like has him rescue her after her fight, when she gets beat pretty bad. And it's understandable. He's just kind of like, I don't really want to get in the middle of a complicated emotional thing. Yeah. Let's just be friends till you kind of figure where you stand on things.
And he never pushes her.
Nope.
Not once. And he does, and it's not like he's like, okay, well, I'm just going to back away and disappear from your life until you figure it out because I can't have you. It's like, no, he actually is like, let's just put pause on the romantic stuff. Let's be friends. I'm going to still help you. I still care about you, and let's figure this thing out. That is just, I think back to the days of Buffy, and freaking Riley, who couldn't look, who went nuts anytime any other guy came around Buffy.
Yeah.
Or how in every single story you see with something like this, it's usually, the two guys are, snarling at each other. They don't have any mutual respect for each other, even though you would think, like, we care about this one person so much, we should understand that there's something in the other that she sees as, as meaningful. So I should really like try to understand what that is. Maybe I might like the guy. And they don't become pals, but they have a level of mutual respect for each other it's such a healthy dialogue and such a healthy model for how really, I wish heterosexual men in particular were taught how to view relationships and what it means to respect another person's autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of this is something you'd said earlier, which is this is the issue of choice, that she's not the prize to be won. It's not the thing to take. It's more like she has a decision to make. And the thing to do here, the adult thing to do, is to just let her make her decision and not, put pressure on or fight. Whatever decision she makes is going to be not because, the two dudes sniped at each other. It'll be, unless that's literally what she said of, go into an arena and whichever one comes out, that's the one I date, right?
It's not going to be like a Red Sonja situation where I will only be with the man who can beat me in a fight.
Right, precisely. It's nice to see. I mean, I'm not personally a huge fan of love triangles, just 'cause I tend to find them a little bit annoying. But I did appreciate that this one didn't do all the things that make love triangles especially annoying.
Yeah,
because it still does the thing where it's these two guys, they're both interested in her, and it's very obvious. Although to Nikki's credit, she has to be told several times that people are interested in her, which I relate to so much because I have been told I flirt with people, and I honestly, I just think I'm having like a normal conversation with someone, and people are like, oh, you were flirting, do you like them? And I'm like, well, yeah, like they're a nice person. Like, no, do you like them? And I'm like, what do you mean you were flirting? I was like, I honestly, we're just having a conversation.
Oh, Sean.
Wow.
I've had it happen
Meanwhile,
so many
like
times.
my husband and I are yelling at the TV, like when she's like, wait, I don't know how he feels about me. And we're like, the hell you don't.
Right? I was like, do we need to draw diagrams? Does Althea need to take photos of the thing for you? It's like, come on.
Yes, Althea needs to draw a
There
diagram.
need to be diagrams, a computer program I can go to on my phone to help me understand, just like Nikki. Nikki needs it.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to talk about relationships, can we talk about Ryan and his boyfriend for a minute?
I
I
have so many
love
feelings.
it and hate it at the same time.
Oh God, I want to hear you. Please explain.
So I love it because this is yet again a very cute couple. And I appreciate so much that the show kind of doesn't want to do the thing of like, let's have like the parents be super homophobic and like all this kinds of stuff. So when he shows up and meets the parents for the first time, obviously Ryan's nervous, but the response...
Oh no, this is not the first time.
Sorry, the first time when they know that he's the boyfriend.
The official first time,
first
yes.
time, I should rephrase. He's super nervous, but it's a very sweet thing. But also there is this really kindness to it, because there's a moment when Ryan's recently gay, or at least out, I should say. He's recently out.
He's recently out,
And
yeah.
so when he talks to him, to Joe is like, I'm cool. Like, I get it. Like, you're kind of new to all this. It's not a big deal. You're adorable as hell, and I just want to like take you out for drinks. Let's have kisses. Like, and I love that. I love that it's a thing where like this is an honest conversation about somebody who is still kind of trying to figure out what it means to be their sexuality. And it's a cute relationship. But the reason I hate it is because he leaves. Damn it. And
Yeah.
I wanted that to go to conclusion. I wanted season 2 to have the marriage where they just have the most adorable gay wedding on earth. And I wanted that, and they took it from me. You bastards. I hate it.
I knew as soon as he said he went to Chicago to meet a bunch of activists and organizers, I was like, oh no.
Yep.
Mm.
No. They're recruiting him. They're trying to write him out of the season.
I didn't like it because I love that. This is a thing that I think in general I really struggle with this season, which is it's clear that when they put this character in, they wanted his activism to be important, but then they didn't write it as an important component for the show as a whole, because there's only one episode where his activism is actually really important, and that's the episode that, weirdly enough, has almost no impact on the rest of the show. It's the episode. It's the Black Lives Matter episode. So if you're like looking at reviews, it's everybody complaining about like they like talked about Black Lives Matter and blah, 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 blah.
Sigh.
And all their complaints are about like how dare they stick politics in, and my complaint is that like how dare they stick it in and then ignore it.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
And it's a thing we put against Leverage as well. That there was an episode that kind of brought up a political issue and it didn't deal with it. And it's a great episode. It deals with it in, I think, a fairly reasonably honest way of the complexities of people's different points of view on this subject, right? The mother feeling uncomfortable about the protest and not wanting to get sucked into the thing that has led to anti-Asian violence in the United States. She just wanted to get sucked into that. She was trying to protect her family. We get it. It's complicated. But then that's it. They get to the conclusion of the episode, and that's the end of it. And I really just... That was the moment when they did that, and then when they did the Chicago thing, I was like, well, if they bring him back, like, what do they do? Because they've just shirked all of it. They've just tossed all of what made his character so integral to the story. They just cut it out, basically. So it's frustrating. But at the same time, like, when he is there, it's really adorable. And
yes,
I like it when they're together.
The things that I liked about that like storyline is that I think that it is also very good to tell stories about people whose experience with their own queerness is very new. Because like learning the ropes of what is essentially a new relationship paradigm is actually very scary sometimes. And I thought that was really neat, and I thought that the fact that Joe is very understanding and thinks that it's very cute was very nice. I also really did, like, in terms of that Black Lives Matter episode, I really did like that episode, and a lot of why I like it is because it was separate, because it gave the entire episode room to just confront this issue on its own and, like, give everybody room to talk about their own feelings about that issue was actually very good. I do understand that the thing that I don't like about it in turn is that in a show that is already very big on community, in a setting where, like, one of the, like, kind of understated but obvious things about Nikki's family is that they're very community oriented. It did feel kind of weird that you have a Black Lives Matter episode and then it never comes up ever again, that, like, people are obviously struggling in this way, and that Joe as a character never obviously is dealing with that issue in that space ever again, and then leaves. Like, that's the part that sucks. The storyline of him leaving I actually think is, like, cool and fine and fair on its own, but in context, it is kind of weird to have somebody who has been in a community for years and is trying to work with that community for the greater good, getting a job to leave and just leaving. Like, that community no longer matters. That's the part that kind of threw me off.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good point. Because he was the leader of that protest. Like, he was the one up there with the bullhorn. The one they were trying to arrest for, quote-unquote, inciting a riot. Because, of course, they love to lie about that shit.
Like, you've been doing the work, and the work just kind of... Like, there are reasons why I perfectly understand why Joe would leave, but I'm never over it about all of those things, so otherwise it just seems like he was doing the work and then he stopped. That kind of sucks.
They wrote being an activist was like having a job, and you could jump from one job to another, and it didn't really matter, and it's like, that's not how activism and community organizing works.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if they had, even if just a really simple script fix would have been even Joe saying, like, hey, I got an offer. There's a lot that I can learn here and bring it back. I don't know when I'm going to come back, but this is my community and this is my home, but I have a chance to go and learn from people who have been doing this much longer than me. And then I want to bring back that knowledge. Back to San Francisco, and then they would have broken up because, Ryan is like, Ryan can say something like he's afraid that, Joe's feelings will change while he's gone, and he just wants to spare them both and spare himself in particular by just breaking it off now, right? Like, and that leaves the door open for Joe to come back. It's not he's just chucking his community for a better opportunity. It's I'm leaving, but I'm going to come back so I can learn, right? Yeah. Like, that would have made that, even a script change like that would have been very, very simple.
Yeah.
I feel
like that episode, like, that scene implied a lot that would have just benefited from being obvious about. And as a result, it means that we're unsure about what they were trying to do with that scene.
Yeah.
And the thing that sucks about it the most, obviously, is in a show that is already majority people of color, Joe is the only black person, and then just poof, gone. That kind of sucks.
Yeah. Because, I mean, let's be fair, Chinatown is, like, there are a lot of Asian people in Chinatown, clearly, but Chinatown's still part of San Francisco. There are a lot of black people in San Francisco. Like, we have not seen any Latino people at all.
Yeah, that's true.
Really?
No, we haven't.
I'm just like,
yeah.
To me, a lot of the thing with the show was it felt like, for the most part, the show wants to be really about, like, this family dynamic and this treatment of mythology. Right, of its version of a Chinese mythology of magic weapons and those kinds of things. And that's where it wants to spend all of its time. And then occasionally it brings stuff in from outside that, from, like, the quote-unquote real world. But it doesn't want to have those be as integral to the story. And so it just kind of peppers them in once in a while, in a way to just say, like, see, we're aware of these things, but we're not going to have them be any more important than things that sometimes show up. And I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with having a show that's not about, quote-unquote, the real world, right? If we want to have a fantasy narrative of a family living in San Francisco who's, involved in this big sort of, like, ancient conspiracy of a sort, involving magic weapons and earthy powers and, like criminal organizations and all kinds of stuff. I think that's fine. I just think that if you also are wanting to have those things, you want to inject those by way of characters or having episodes about those things, you have to treat them with just more care and more awareness.
I mean, you don't even have to have like that special issue about everybody, right?
Right. It doesn't have to be everybody.
It's just more. It's just more about showing, like, if you're going to say that you're part of a community, be more intentional about actually showing what that community looks like.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that, okay, well, most of the folks who live in Chinatown are going to be Chinese. They're going to be Asian American.
Yep.
The people you see coming in and out of Chinatown, though, everyone goes into Chinatown for something, whether it's for the restaurants or you going to the shops, because it's neighboring other neighborhoods, because there are tourists. Like, just show that there are more people involved in that, involved in the community. Like, I can't imagine that, Ryan Ryan is only treating Asian folks who come into the community center, because I mean, it's still a community center. I would expect that any folks who are in need, who aren't necessarily part of the Chinese American community, might still go there if they knew that was a safe place for them.
I think that's a good point you bring up about lots of people coming to Chinatown, because San Francisco's Chinatown is kind of famous. Like, a lot of people go to San Francisco, go to Chinatown, and that's people from all over the place. Like, and you could kind of show this just like having like a random French couple like asking directions in French and people going that way. Like, just little things you could kind of do without necessarily adding a lot. But yeah, that is a really good point.
Like, I love the show. I think there's a lot of potential in it. I just hope that in the second season that they make Chinatown seem less of an isolated area within the rest of the city, right? I mean, I understand, and I'm fully behind the idea of centering Chinese Americans in this story, because this is absolutely, like, I want to be specific. It's not just an Asian American thing. It is a Chinese American story.
Yeah.
But you can do that without making that community seem isolated from the rest of the city that it's a part of. Because, I mean, it's San Francisco. Even though it's it is a pain in the ass to get around that city. It's like, it's so, oh my God, just having to deal with the traffic and the way that the roads go. But I don't know if we're going to get more mystical weapons in the second season, or if the second season is going to be more of a, like, fighting the criminal enterprise of a vengeful, Chinese mobster. Because Jesus, those last couple of episodes became absolute soap opera, and I mean this in a good way. But I can't have you keeping me from my mission. So even though I have fallen in love with you, I need to kill you anyway. Because, Jilan.
It's like, why?
In a graveyard.
Why does she is her own worst enemy, I swear to God.
She is, but she's traumatized too, which is the thing. So I think a lot of that comes from there, that I'm glad that we got that backstory for her about why she hates her sister so much, because she was a child when her sister literally accidentally killed their father, and she perceives it as not an accident at all. She saw it as just straight up a murder. And it's really interesting to see that pain and anguish being part of her central way of existing. That there's a moment in the story where she says, like, my entire life I've existed in pain, and so I'm like, I just continue to seek that out, to continue to do that to others, because I am always in pain. I am always suffering because of both her medical issue, but also the things that have happened in her life. But there are moments when she's kind of offered like an out, like, at least in her history, she's given that a moment of like, you don't have to exist like this. You can walk away from it, but she's choosing it anyway. This is the path she chooses, or the destiny that has been chosen for her by herself.
The thing that got me the most about that scene is that moment, Kerwin Tan gives her an out as well. And it's like the most curious out in the first place, which is, if you want to kill me, then I'm not going to stop you. But I want you to know that that's because I still love you. It's like, you had this moment to, like, not do the thing! Oh my god!
Yeah.
Like, you could just take the dude who you did not expect to fall in love with, who is just as shady as you are, but also gets your pain, and the two of you could just walk away. You could just walk away.
You could have Hot Liu Kang. You could have him.
Yeah, he's yours. It's not every day a man looks you in the eye and says, I will die for you even if you're going to kill me. Take the win. Go home.
That's true love.
Oh my god, I had so many feelings about that scene.
Oh, or like, it's every time she's given an out, it would mean realizing that the story that she has told herself of her life wasn't completely true.
Mm-hmm.
That her sister did not purposefully kill their dad. It was an accident. All she had to do was accept that was also a reality. But if she did, then everything that she'd based her entire life on would be based on nothing to her. So she's choosing to remain committed to this story that she's told herself because to choose otherwise would be an obliteration of self.
Yeah.
Like it's so very like epic story tragic. Like this is the tragedy of so many like well-written villains in these kind of epics. And it's just like I don't know if I necessarily want to see her redeemed, but I would love to see, they didn't kill her, so she's clearly going to be around.
Yeah, because she's going to be a regular in season 2.
Yeah, Russell Tan is not just pissed off at Nikki, he's pissed off at her too.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because she's been upgraded to series regular for season 2. That means she's going to be integral to the story. So what kind of story are we getting for her? Does she get a redemption, or are they going to go for something else? Clearly, she's not going to be the central villain, because that doesn't make sense given what we've just been given. She would be some sort of like rival, but maybe working like there's going to be a moment next season. I'm calling it now, where Nikki and her work together.
Oh yeah,
100%.
Yeah. Part of what I think they're aiming for, or what I hope they're aiming for rather, is that they give Jilan enough moments to be able to say, I am still in pain and I don't know what to do with that pain anymore because I aimed for this goal and it stopped and it's no longer available and I have nobody to direct this pain at anymore. And then Nikki comes and goes, well, you can do other things with that pain than redirect pain. And Jilan spent like the whole season going, no, that doesn't make sense. It's pain. It's supposed to just be pain. And then like just gradually discovers, even if it doesn't adequately redeem her and it doesn't change the way that she's perceived, she gets enough moments to be able to say, I can do something else with all of this pain. I can redirect it in a way that is not just about hurting people, while still acknowledging that there is some kind of hurt and that doesn't just go away, because she has genuinely suffered a lot.
So much trauma.
We can't write that away in another 13 episodes, and she's still going to lash out in those ways. But it would be really valuable for her to get a moment to say, there was something more valuable that I could have done, and I see that it is valuable, even if I'm not always going to pick that all the time. I think that would be cool.
Another aspect of this that I think is interesting is what Nikki is going to do, because at the end of this season, Jilan is in prison, or presumably is on her way to prison. Maybe she gets away in the first episode, but she's on her way towards some version of justice, where she's going to go to jail for the many, many, many crimes she's committed, including multiple counts of murder.
So much murder.
Yeah, right, because she's murdered a K-pop star, which is a little bit high profile. She's murdered...
I'm still laughing over the K-pop star storyline. K-pop star turns out to be like a secret guardian superhero martial arts person.
Like, everything about that episode I dug a lot, but like the thing that kills me the most about that episode is, why would you kill a pop star in his hotel room? Obviously, people are going to eventually like, there are cameras everywhere, and the police are going to arrive immediately.
They looped them. So that they wouldn't be able to see.
I mean, let's be fair. I think at this point, Jilan had no fucks left. She was out. did not care.
Interpol is like, we need to get the persons responsible for killing this one K-pop musician, and like that alone, Jilan is gonna be in jail for years.
But this is the question I'm raising, because throughout this season, Nikki has presented herself as caring very much about justice, right? To the point that even her white lawyer friend / former love interest is a person she works with on a number of occasions to use the legal system to deal with things that are problems of justice, and has, of course, helped him to deal with situations in which the legal system has failed to provide justice, as in the case of getting somebody out of accepting a charge, pleading guilty to a murder or manslaughter charge that he did not commit. And so this puts Nikki in a position, because if Jilan gets away, which is the only way she's not going to prison, she gets away, she goes out there, how is Nikki going to respond to Jilan in this context? Is she going to attempt to bring her to justice? Is that going to be part of the story we get? Or is she going to be put into conflict about her own values precisely because Jilan can help her with certain other issues involving other villainous figures? And what does that do for Nikki's perception of the moral landscape of what's acceptable and what's not?
Oh, I would love for this to become a plot line where justice is not criminal justice. It's not about criminal justice. It is about restorative justice. I would like to see Nikki's moral conundrum be about realizing that criminal justice isn't actually justice. Like, true justice for what Jilan has done means restoring the damage and the imbalances that her crimes that caused others. And that, it's not, clearly we've already seen that the criminal justice system, even in the world of Kung Fu, nobody really likes it or trusts it very much. I will eat my hat if DA Boy doesn't end up quitting and becoming a public defender or something like that.
That seems the trajectory, and I think that for sure the thing you're talking about the difference between criminal and restorative justice seems to be the way he's going. Because so far he's finding some dirty stuff in his lawyer office, including that his office he basically has admonished him for finding out that a person they were going to accept a plea bargain for was totally 100% innocent, and a richer guy was going to get away with it. So I think that's part of where his story is going to go. But because he's friends with Nikki, I think that, there's going to be an obvious connection there. They're probably going to both have to come to some sort of maybe different paths, but come to similar conclusions, perhaps.
I love the fact that they included this particular storyline to show that, it's not about getting justice with the DA's office. It's about just getting the case out of the way, right? And getting the case out of the way is going to steamroll the less powerful person every time. And I like that they are making that part of, they're acknowledging that reality. And I think it's important that the show acknowledged this reality by showing the person getting railroaded being Asian, because there is there's a huge myth in multiple directions on, part of the model minority myth, and that, the people who, like, when you only see Black people in jail, it's like, it's perpetuating the idea that Black people are going to be in jail, but also that but if you're not Black, this won't happen to you. Like, this is a real discussion that happens within Asian communities, with a lot of progressive activists having to remind our different communities that immigration is also our problem. A refugee resettlement is also a problem that affects our communities. Being written up on charges and railroaded into taking guilty pleas is a problem that is a part of our community. You can't just fob it off as saying, like, well, at least this doesn't happen to us, sort of thing. That's what those storylines feel to me, that they're the point that they're trying to make. It's not erasing that this happens more to other folks. It's that, no, this is a problem for our community too. And you have to recognize that this exists and that we are better off in solidarity with the other people who get railroaded by a system that's more interested in putting bodies behind bars as long as they won't cause you a fuss. Some rich white guy will.
All right, well, we got to stop
Yes.
because we could talk for another hour, but I can't edit.
This always happens. This always happens.
It always happens. So, as always, thanks everybody for joining for Screen Scouts, but our guest has things. So, Michi, if you would be so kind, where can folks learn about you and your things?
So I am the features editor for Prism, which is a Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led journalism outlet. You can find us on prismreports.org. We're doing some fantastic reporting where we are making sure that the voices of those most deeply impacted by the issues are those that are being centered in our reporting. So you can find me there. If you are a freelancer who likes to cover issues of criminal justice, abolition, all those sorts of things, environmental justice, you can pitch us. We pay 40 cents a word, and you get to work with me as a long features editor. Or if you are a news writer and can turn around pieces pretty quickly, you get to work with my awesome and very, very knowledgeable colleague, Carolyn Copeland. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter as Geek Melange, GeekMelange. So you'll see pictures of like food and fire spinning and nerdy stuff. I usually perform with a group in Chicago called Raks Geek, RAKS, GEEK. You can find them on Instagram as well and on Twitter. You'll see us doing fire performance and belly dancing in cosplay. I love doing Wonder Woman with fire swords. It's one of my favorite things to do. And you'll find me on the Twitters, and I've been convinced to get on TikTok.
Oh boy.
That's also going to happen. I blame Mickey Kendall. This is all Mickey getting me on TikTok that's all her fault.
I look forward to seeing many fire spinning TikToks then.
Well, thank you so much, Michi, for coming back on the show. I know it was really tough, but...
It's never tough to hang out with you all and talk about this nerdy stuff. I super enjoy it. I know Ted Lasso doesn't totally count as nerdy, but if anyone ever decides to do Ted Lasso or Hilda, I am up for that kind of stuff anytime.
I think Ted Lasso counts, because isn't that basically the premise is that an American runs a European football team?
And drops pop culture references left and right.
I mean, that's already a fantasy, so
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah. Well, we will find excuses to get you back on, don't worry. Well, as for our delightful listeners, if you, again, want to let us know what you think, skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions. You can follow us at skiffyandfanty on Twitter and Instagram, and get the newsletter at skiffyandfanty.com/newsletter. And lastly, if you like what we do, there are two easy ways you can support. You can throw money at us at patreon.com/skiffyandfanty, which we will then use for illegal activities as part of our secret effort to find mystical weapons.
No, we won't. Oh my God.
Hush! Sean!
I'm so sorry. Let me rephrase that, since I'm apparently not supposed to give away our secrets that are totally true. If you want to give us money to support us for doing regular podcast things that are totally normal and not at all involve illegal activities involving secret weapons, patreon.com/skiffyandfanty is the best way to do that. The other way to support us is 5-star reviewing on iTunes and other podcatchers that have a rating system, because that helps us reach new ear holes. And I like ear holes because then I can talk to them. So you can find me at Sean Duke on Twitter, seanduke.net, and patreon.com/thejoyfactory.
And you can find me at The Rising Tides on Twitter and on Speculate, where I currently GM The Case of the Cindered Seal, a Blades in the Dark actual play.
On episode 376 at this point, so...
Yes, we've been going for a while.
Going for a while. Well, great. So after this, I have decided to take up a very special form of Kung Fu called Professor Fu, which just basically involves me sitting on my couch watching TV and drinking beer, which is a thing that anybody can do at home.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Yeah, just thought, give everybody a workout regimen that's really easy for them to follow.
I'm sure. Oh, Lord.
And on that note, awkward ending and scene. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.